The movie starts with the protagonist, Craig, introducing his hometown of Harlow, Maine. It is a picturesque village with only a few prime places. Nothing really happens here, and all the people are boring. As he narrates the story, we learn that Craig has moved away from Harlow in the present and is recounting his time spent there as a child during the early 2000s. He also talks about the weird experiences he went through in his hometown. The movie then flashes back in time, where it is revealed that Craig lost his mother when he was still a young boy. He still blames himself for it. However, the cause of death is not mentioned. Next, we are introduced to a local billionaire and the richest man in Harlow, Mr. Harrigan. Being a devout Christian, he regularly visits the church and prays to God. One day, when he sees Craig reciting a story, he is greatly impressed. So, the same evening, Mr. Harrigan visits Craig's place with an offer. He wants the young boy to read him books of all kinds, as he is losing his eyesight. In return, Craig will be paid $5 an hour for his service. Unsurprisingly, the latter accepts without any hesitation. On the first day of the service, Craig is astonished to see the billionaire's grand villa. It appears to have all the luxuries one could wish for, but despite having over 50 rooms, only 2 more occupants, a gardener and a maid, live there. After a while, Craig greets the old man and starts reading a book to him. He continues doing so 3 times a week. The old man also provides Craig with some lottery tickets as a bonus. Although Craig had agreed to take up the work initially for the money, he grows a strong and caring bond with Mr. Harrigan over the next 5 years. After getting to know the billionaire personally, Craig also has an interest in knowing who exactly he is. So, one day, he goes to an internet cafe and looks up Mr. Harrigan. It turns out the old man used to be a businessman with a record of workers complaining about his strong-willed nature. Surprisingly, some of them were so fed up with his ruthlessness that they even committed the unthinkable. However, this doesn't affect Craig's view of the old man, and he continues reading him books and novels. The movie then skips by a few more years, and now Craig has become a teenager. He starts attending high school at a popular institution outside the city. Unfortunately, Craig runs into trouble when he makes eye contact with a bully named Kenny on the very first day of school. During the lunch break, Kenny approaches Craig and casually asks him to polish his shoes. When the latter refuses, Kenny becomes a little too harsh on him. Thankfully, before things can escalate, the science teacher, Miss Hart, intervenes. Later that week, Craig has a word with Mr. Harrigan about the incident. The old man advises him that he should always deal with the bullies harshly, be it at school or in business, as he himself had faced. After getting familiar with a relatively new social life in the new school, Craig realizes the importance of smartphones as almost a social currency. The high school cafeteria, where all the cool and rich kids meet, is divided by the types of phones that the students carry. For instance, the group with the iPhones is a bunch of douchebags. It is considered the coolest. Wanting to fit in with this crowd, Craig asks for an iPhone from his father. Unfortunately, the old man immediately refuses, stating a teenager should only focus on his studies. But on Christmas Eve, Craig receives another lottery ticket as a bonus gift from his employer, Mr. Harrigan. When he scratches it, he finds out he has won a whopping $3,000. To make his day even better, his father finally gets him an iPhone as a Christmas gift. Feeling ecstatic with the gifts he got, Craig uses his new iPhone to call Mr. Harrigan first, to thank him for the lottery ticket that he had won. They chat for a while before calling it a night. The following day at school, Craig excitedly shows off his new phone to his friends. He then goes to the cafeteria to join the cool kids, where his crush, Jennifer, is seated. Next, in a voiceover, Craig reveals that he has developed an understanding that his old employee is lonely and helpless without him, and he too perhaps feels warm while spending time with Mr. Harrigan. It is out of all these feelings that he decides to give an iPhone similar to his to the old man, not just to introduce him to the new technology, but also so that they can keep in touch with each other from wherever. Therefore, Craig buys the phone and politely gives it to his employer. This is some Steve Jobs propaganda right here. Initially, Mr. Harrigan denies keeping such modern objects close to him. He believes that he will become addicted to them. However, Mr. Harrigan is quickly swayed over by the phone when Craig shows him the process of live tracking stock prices. He can also read up-to-date news, unlike newspapers that inform news a day late. Over the next few weeks, Craig teaches him new things that can be done with a smartphone. Mr. Harrigan becomes so invested in the device that he even loses interest in the books that Craig reads for him. He simply keeps scrolling through his phone the entire day.
James Joyce is cool and all, but have you seen the badunkadunks on TikTok?
As days pass, we see Mr. Harrigan getting caught up with diseases, as he has to wear oxygen masks at night. Unfortunately, tragedy soon strikes, as one morning, when Craig visits the huge house as part of his routine, he finds Mr. Harrigan lying dead from his old age-related sickness. Since the 2 housekeepers are on leave, he panics and calls his dad, and the latter advises him to stand by until help arrives. Till then, Craig, with tears in his eyes, reads a book for his close friend one last time. Cut to the next scene. Craig, his father, and a few community people gather together for Mr. Harrigan's funeral. The teenager is devastated after losing his companion, but he still manages to read some of his favorite books. He then decides to secretly put Mr. Harrigan's phone inside the corpse's clothes before it is buried. Soon after the funeral, Craig and his father are approached by Mr. Harrigan's personal finance manager. They learn that the old man has left Craig a large sum of $800,000 in his will to help him with the cost of higher studies. Overwhelmed by such a grand fortune, and also out of genuine love and respect for the deceased man, Craig leaves a voicemail on Mr. Harrigan's phone. He admits that he would give up the entire sum if he could just have his old friend back. Craig also leaves a text message mentioning how he misses the time they spent together. This is when things start to get unnatural. The following morning, Craig gets a reply, which is a very cryptic message from Mr. Harrigan's number. Startled by this strange happening, he informs his father about it, but the old man firmly believes that someone must be playing tricks on him. When Craig cannot take such an explanation and insists on digging up Mr. Harrigan's grave in hopes of finding him alive, his father clarifies the situation. Apparently, the old man was alone that day, and due to extreme boredom, he died of a heart attack. The autopsy results verified this after an intense body checkup. Hearing this, Craig comes back to his senses and takes his father's words. As the days pass by, Craig continues grieving his loss, but he doesn't stop going to school. One day, when the local bully Kenny is selling narcotics, he is caught red-handed and expelled. Unfortunately, he wrongly assumes that Craig was the one who snitched on him. So, on the annual event day, he sneaks inside the school premises and beats up Craig. However, despite all this, the latter still doesn't report it to the authorities. Instead, he talks about it on voicemail to Mr. Harrigan's number, obviously not expecting anything to happen, but only as a means of sharing his grief. But, to everyone's surprise, Kenny is soon found dead in an accident. Although it was reported that the bully was heavily drunk and had fallen from his second-story bedroom, we see his body with a can of shoe polish in his hand and some polish smeared on his mouth. This is eerily interesting, because in the very first interaction that Craig and Kenny had, the bully had threatened Craig to either polish his shoes or eat the whole thing. Meanwhile, Craig loses his mind, as he now firmly believes that the ghost of Mr. Harrigan killed the bully. Shaken up to the core, he researches more into Mr. Harrigan's past and finds out about a man who was once employed by the billionaire, but was fired after he was apparently caught stealing. A few days later, this man was also found dead, just like many of the other employees who worked for Mr. Harrigan over the years. Craig is at a loss for words because he believes his former close friend was evil. He also decides to change his phone number by buying a new one. However, he keeps the old phone, as it is the first one he ever had. For a while, everything seems fine, as Craig graduates high school and gets into college for a journalism course in Boston. He narrates that he is doing quite well in his studies, but suddenly, his father calls him one day to give him another shocking and sad bit of news. It turns out that his high school science teacher, Miss Hart, was tragically killed in an accident. During his high school days, Craig had grown close to the teacher, as she was the only one who gave him support and company during his times of trouble. Craig then returns to his hometown and learns that Dean Whitmore, the man charged in this accident, had been drinking and driving. He was also previously arrested for drunk driving. Although Craig and the other students want Dean to be punished for his reckless behavior, the court lets him off the hook by simply ordering him to go to rehab for 6 months. Enraged that justice was not served, Craig decides to take matters into his own hands. He recalls the unusual supernatural power he possesses, and without wasting any time, he leaves a voicemail to Mr. Harrigan's number, requesting the murder of Dean Whitmore. The very next day, Craig feels bad about his actions and hopes that no one gets hurt. He also keeps checking the internet to see if Dean is alive. Unfortunately, his worst fears come true, as Dean is discovered dead in the shower of the rehabilitation facility where he was staying. Now that he is completely aware of what is taking place, Craig freaks out even more. He also begins to comprehend that he is technically to blame for the murders of 2 people, Dean and the bully Kenny. Craig just watched Death Note and he's freaking out. After coming to this revelation, Craig visits Mr. Harrigan's home and starts searching for any clues that appear supernatural. He doesn't find much in the room, but when he opens a secret closet, he discovers old pictures of Mr. Harrigan. Craig had always questioned Mr. Harrigan's decision to hire him over some of the other boys, some of whom were better readers for the position. Now he has finally got his answer. Just like him, Mr. Harrigan also lost his mother at a very young age, and this is why he preferred Craig over the others. In the next scene, Craig visits the graveyard and starts talking to Mr. Harrigan's grave. He claims that he now understands the cryptic texts he had received from the old man's number. It actually meant Mr. Harrigan was asking Craig to stop contacting him. The main reason for this, according to Craig, is either that Mr. Harrigan was being hurt by these reach-outs because he was unable to rest peacefully, or that he did not want Craig to get hurt because the young boy was actually entering a mental state of anger and retaliation. After the visit to the grave, his old phone, phone, the last means of communication between him and Mr. Harrigan, is finally thrown into the lake. This puts an end to their paranormal discussions for good. Craig also wants to get rid of his existing phone, but is unable to do so because cell phones have become such an integral part of modern life. What a moral. The movie ends with another narrated background, where Craig expresses his desire to be buried with empty pockets after his death, precisely meaning that he doesn't want anything, especially mobile phones.
What do you think about this recap? Let us know your opinion in a comment below. I hope you enjoyed this, and see you in the following video. Don't forget to hit the like to help the channel out and subscribe and activate the bell for more videos, and thank you for watching.